Yes, welcome. I see that we are about 25 participants for now. I hope that more people join. This is an exciting subject. We are now talking about what does EU want with a digital wallet, and we will quickly just introduce Norstella. Nils Inge, do you want to say a couple of words?
In English?
Yes, preferably.
Okay. So Norstella is a Norwegian digital community trying to help companies in Norway to on the digital ID side and helping them to be totally digital. And in this context, working together with DIN and with Signicat, setting up this arrangement.
Sounds good. And you guys have been having events for a couple of years now around digital identity, right?
That's correct, for quite a few years.
Good. Then DIN is a non-profit organization that was created about 2 years ago. They do focus more on the self-sovereign side of things, the new future of identity, and try to bridge the gap between the whole international community that's working on new types of effort, and also bringing in the philosophy of what my data is trying to achieve. And we have now, this is our second event together. We had one about before summer, which we call the Future Digital Identity. You can go to this URL if you want to have a look at the event there and all the other events we have had. So this has been a very nice collaboration and bringing in a lot of good speakers. So the agenda today is a quick framing by Jon Ørles. Then we'll have a fireside chat with Jon Ørles, Kai Wagner, and Tor Alvik, and myself. We'll do an intro of each participant in a second. If there are any questions, we have the YouTube live stream. So hello to you all. Just ask in the chat over there. We will pick it up and bring it into the conversation. It is preferably that you point out who the question is to, so we can direct it to the right person. You can also say everyone if you just want an open-ended question. So let's just do an intro of the three participants who will not do a framing. So Kai, want to introduce yourself? I think we lost your voice there.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Shall I just quickly introduce myself?
Yes,
I can't see the agenda anymore. So yeah, just introducing myself. So Kai Wagner from the Berlin-based company Yolocom. We're a player in the decentralized identity space, active for the past 7.5 years. We've been developing decentralized identity technology ever since. At some point that was started to be called self-sovereign identity. And we decided to also use that term for us because it was very much matching our developments that has been around since even before. And today I'm also here in my role as the co-chair of the Identity Working Group at INATBA, the International Association of Blockchain Applications, which is based in Brussels and where I lead the Identity Working Group for the past 2 years already. And we've been actively working on the eIDAS consultation last year, as well as currently working on a reaction to the eIDAS 2 proposal in the works. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Tor, do you want to share some words about you?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. My name is Tor Alvik. I work for the Norwegian Digitalization Agency in a role as a specialist director focusing on digital identity. In this setting, I'm working on how we can utilize the eIDAS revision in our work with the Norwegian public sector and also for the eID systems coming up. I'm also part of the cooperation network for the eIDAS and will also be one of Norwegian's experts into working with the new toolbox for the e-wallet.
Sounds good. Thank you. And a quick introduction by me. I'm a co-founder of Diwala and also a founder of DIN. Diwala is working in the SSI ecosystem in Africa. And we are also trying to involve ourselves in the AU framework, which is an identity framework, which seems a lot like a copy of EU framework, but it's going to be interesting to see how that work evolves. And yes, and I also founded DIN too because I wanted to make sure that Norway, who has been leading in digital identity, is trying to embrace this new way of doing stuff. Jon, I'll let you basically do an introduction by starting up with your framing. So I'll quit my screen share and then you can take over.
Yep. Let's see if I can find the... Yeah, I can. Just a second. Just a second, like this. Then we have a share screen, I think. Yeah. So yeah, I'm Jon. Been working at Signicat for 3.5 years on the product side, but also doing European standardization and some other stuff for Signicat. And now working on implications of what happens with this ADAS revision guides much of what we're doing in our company. So yeah, I'll try to be quick. Much stuff in here will be just you get it as handouts, so you can read yourself more than anything. What is this EU wallet initiative? Well, firstly, it comes from the top. This is launched September last year by Ursula von der Leyen in the State of the Union speech. E-identity for all Europeans, essentially, is the goal of this. Motivation, more or less, strengthen internal market, more efficient government, strengthen the cross-border perspective of the EU, and not really mention that spoken out, but also it's one of more initiatives to fight or tackle the big techs. Yeah, I'll skip. ADAS is of course a regulation that applies to all European countries as it is. You have the electronic identity part, you have the qualified trust services, and you have the also like statement for legal acceptance of electronic documents. Main point to raise is it's a legal text. It's not a technical specification, but standards are produced to meet ADAS requirements. So there are technical standards, but they are formally not mandatory, and these are legal requirements. What comes out of ADAS? What is in the electronic identity part of ADAS today? Well, it's very limited, and this is because identity and also electronic identity are national issues governed by the states. There's no EU identity. You have an identity in one or more countries, citizen, resident, rights and obligations. So the only thing covered is cross-border EID, how to go from one country to another, and only for public services. Public services are required to accept what has been so-called notified by a government. And there is an ADAS infrastructure in place that can be used for this cross-border authentication transactions. Trust services is different because while identity is a national matter, trust services are commercial services mainly. Can be provided by government, but the trust service is mainly for payment and a commercial service. And this part of ADAS is founded on the Treaty on the Internal Market, meaning this is something that can, when it's established, be offered all over Europe. Mainly signature services related to signing. There's a qualified level, which is the top level, where ADAS sets specific requirements for services. It's audited, supervised, and it's the highest level you can get. Also, non-qualified trust services, which are lighter regulated. Qualified level is sort of a desired level. We get a bit back to that. So what has worked? What's the result after 5 years of ADAS in the EID area? There is one very important result, and that's the alignment of the assurance level substantial and high. So these are more and more becoming pan-European reference levels in all countries, even like Norway adopted a new framework for EID now, and it's clear that the Norwegian levels are substantial and high. They're the same as the ADAS levels. What has not worked? It's a much longer list. Notification system, minimal practical effect. We got this ADAS infrastructure. Yeah, it works. It's not used. It's old-fashioned and it's not available to the private sector. It's only available to government agencies. And foremost, there's a lack of EID deployment in Europe in many countries. There's a lack of deployment and/or use at national level. And nothing, of course, nothing works cross-border if it doesn't work nationally. So overall, ADAS has failed on the electronic identity scheme. That is recognized also by the Commission and the EU authorities, that there's a need to do more in this area. For trust services, you could say qualified concept aligned across member states. Yeah, this is pretty good. It works so far, but there is stuff that has not worked the same way. We don't see much of this internal market cross-border service provisioning. Some is happening. Qualified as a concept is partly successful, but it's still the ultra secure and expensive option. So there is linking to the bottom point, deployment and use, national and international, is limited. It's not been taken up as much as intended. So overall, this is definitely not a failure, but it's also today not a great success, I would say. So what happens ADAS revision? For trust services, there aren't that many changes, but the most predominant changes is that you get 4 more trust services. 2 of them in red are clearly linked to the wallet and to what goes on in the identity area, attestation of attributes and recording into an electronic ledger. Then you have also archival and you have remote signing as separate services. So what is attestation of attributes as a trust service? It means that a trust service provider, meaning a commercial actor in the internal market, signs a declaration on attributes from authentic sources. So what is provided here, at least by a qualified attribute attestation, these attributes can be assumed to be correct about that person. And the authentic source is a system that a government states that this is the true source of information about these attributes. There is a minimum set of attributes defined. This should be available from all member states. And there is, of course, an interface to the EU wallet, meaning these attributes will be made available via the wallet under user control for when they are used. So there are some risks here. For example, to what extent are these authentic sources really available? We are used to the Nordics, where we have a well-developed registry infrastructure. So in the Nordics, no problem. In some other countries, this can really be an issue to make you get all this different information available in a trustworthy way. There's also a huge standardization effort needed there. The qualified ledger, there is one reason behind it, is to remove a reliance on cryptocurrency ledgers and the similar existing systems out there, so to speak, in the wild. There are initiatives piloting pan-European ledger system, and when you get it as a qualified ledger provider, it's supervised, approved, audited, and will have a termination plan, for example. So qualified ledger can be created by one or more such trust service providers. And these services can then, as qualified service, as trust services, be offered all across the EU. So if you use this, you will have a presumption of uniqueness, authenticity of data and time, and sequential ordering of what goes onto the ledger. It's not explicitly stated as far as I see. Maybe I overlooked something, but it's at least likely that the EU wallet will use such ledgers, qualified ledgers providers, to store validation information connected to attributes. So what's the wallet? It's as a starting point, a level high EID. It can be used nationally, cross-border for authentication, issued nationally, providing basic identification and also attributes, enabling qualified signatures and full user control on the release of information. It's still a government responsibility. EID is still a national competence. Many of us argued that you should have EID as a qualified trust service, meaning an open market for provisioning of electronic identity services in Europe. That did not happen, likely because government wants to control this themselves. So a wallet is either issued by the government itself, it's issued on behalf of a government by some public procurement process, but it can also be issued by private actors approved by government. So a country can choose that model that we see in the Nordics, where you have private EID issuers that are accepted by government. That model can be continued also for wallet providers. To Signicat, for example, as a provider in this market, it means a wallet provider cannot operate cross-border, and a commercial provider will have actually limited opportunities in this market, except in those countries that choose model C. So really, somewhat that is the model that likely could be preferred, but in this case it's up to the individual governments what they want to do. There are some technical issues here. As Tor mentioned, there's a toolbox to be developed. That use of the toolbox will be mandatory. It's not clear yet what the content will be. Maybe Tor knows more, but it's a technical architecture, reference model, standards, and specifications. There are some, but maybe too few standards to build on, so there's work to be done. There's mobile app as a user device. There is emphasis on offline use. We had a discussion yesterday, Kai, on that one. In the Nordics, we are used to being online all the time, but in this case, there is emphasis that the wallet and the information must be used also offline, meaning information must effectively be stored on the phone. Where can the wallet be used? Public services, private service providers, where these are required to use strong user authentication, and also explicitly, as defined by the Digital Services Act, very large online platform, meaning in reality the big techs will be required to accept the wallet in their interface. So to start off the wallet, the primer will be your official national identity, by an identity card or some other way of doing the identity proofing, which gets your basic identity into the wallet. You could look up in population registers, for example, where these are available. And the minimum set of personal identification data defined is then name, date of birth, and a unique and persistent identifier. that shall enable linking identities cross-border. So you can link your German identity to your Norwegian identity by coupling these identifiers. This is possibly a controversial issue. We used to having such identifiers in the Nordics. Many other countries in Europe don't have them. And the wallet provider here is then again either government or a commercial provider, which is approved at national level. For attribute provisioning, you get these authentic sources that are nationally approved, and you have the qualified attestation provider coming in there. So all interactions in the wallet will be, as I understand it, through the wallet provider that will have the external interfaces. So when this service provider on the bank or whatever on the right-hand side asks for some attributes, it will go through the wallet provider, and the user will get these through a qualified attestation provider, fetching the information from these true authentic sources. And that's the minimum set of attributes referred that shall be available. So the user controls the release of attributes to these service providers, and always goes through the wallet directly. I've indicated dotted lines that you can use a ledger for the validation information for the service providers to check this. Last one from my side, what are the risks and opportunities and what happens here? Will it happen? Yeah, definitely. Will it be a success? Who knows? There's one extreme. EU wallet is hardly used. It's just not a success. Other EIDs prevail. On the other extreme, it becomes the only EID in Europe, the one that's used for everything and by everyone. Likely will face the middle situation, that this will be over several years one of several EIDs in the market. There are some evident risks. First is, will governments are obliged to provide a wallet to their citizens, but will they get put priority on this? Will this be something they do half-heartedly or full-heartedly with strong support? And the wallet is voluntary for users, and governments are not known as being good at sales and marketing if they want to sell this to get it deployed and in use. Business model is also, users don't pay, but there needs to be a payment flow to all the providers in here. For example, an attribute provider. How is an attribute provider paid when the service provider obtains the attributes through the wallet, and in this case? And for the existing EIDs, some examples of them in the middle. What will happen to them? The statement is that they will exist in parallel, but is the reality that they may be forced out of business? What are the rules in this case? Competition law and state subsidies and such, when a wallet is seen as venturing into the market that's already, where there already exist some actors. So that was the framing.
Thanks a lot.
Too much time, but yeah.
No, it's a good framing. It sets a lot in context. I'll now share my screen here. So let us move onwards. There you go. So thanks for that framing. I think there already came a couple of participant questions. We'll take those along the discussion. We'll move over to a very pixelated, nice fireside chat. And we did have a couple of questions that we thought about asking, like how much do we anticipate the initial suggestion will change until there are regulations in place? And a couple of more other questions, which I will kind of try to lead us through. Again, for every participant, we are picking up everything you say in YouTube. And also, if you point out to who you want the question to be to, we will bring that in. So we can start with the first one, and I want to hear from Tor, because you're basically the Norwegian government, and then how do you see that this suggestion will change over time before there actually are the regulations in place? Do you believe that? How far do you believe they come?
Well, it is right now a bit hard to say because it's not. It's quite recent. It was put to the Parliament and the Council just a couple of months ago. So far, our understanding is that there haven't been much negative response. So there seems to be a quite large support for the regulation as such in the EU. We will, of course, from the Norwegian side, following it closely, also with bringing in our Norwegian views on this. But it's like John said, it's very, very likely that this will happen, absolutely. And we've foreseen just minor adjustments to the regulation, actually.
Yeah. Kai, do you have any updates, like from a European perspective or a German perspective?
Not necessarily from a European perspective, but I think it's interesting that we now see the discussion on the toolbox happen. Coming up in the next few weeks, I think we'll have a first round of toolbox discussion and basically a bit more details on who is involved and which groups of actors will be involved. It could be very much coming from the Commission only, but there's also a chance that we'll actually have multiple actors be able to join that debate, because it's obviously a very important debate. From the German perspective, I can just say that I think the current German government that is in place until only the end of the month, as you might know, has been very much backing that approach. And with the German self-sovereign identity pilot project that is currently still running, and also the environment that the German government has built around the secure element integration of their eID solution to bring it onto a mobile phone and not even have to use the physical card anymore, the two German kind of ID or digital ID focused projects are very much aligned with the eIDAS 2 proposal. So I'm personally quite positive about that development from a German perspective, if I can paraphrase that development.
Yeah. Do you guys know if there will be any non-European actors, based on that there's a very, very buzzing environment happening over in the US? Any thoughts on that?
Right now, the regulation proposal reads as if there was no option for non-European providers to provide technology into that system, especially not provide notified wallets. So the way I read the regulation proposal at the moment does not allow for non-European wallets to be notified under this regulation, which means not being accepted under this regulation as an eIDAS wallet. And I think that has been a conscious move, because there is an intention to make Europe more digitally sovereign. And actually, it's part of the European strategy for Digital 2030, I think it's called, to improve European digital sovereignty overall. So that's a decision that has also been made in other similarly kind of directed projects. Also the projects around the European self-sovereign identity framework, for example, that reliance on non-European providers was minimized.
Yeah. Jon or Tor, how much do you think the self-sovereign space will kind of leak into these regulations? Because we have seen that there is not much mention in initial documents of SSI. So I just wonder what your thoughts on that.
As we understand it, this regulation is not a self-sovereign regulation at all. It's about eID under the state control. We see a lot of the usual way of thinking related to eID. The e-wallet is, of course, new technology, next generation approaches. But for us, this is still eID provided by the state or by someone that the state relies on. And not directly a self-sovereign system as such, even though the user control over his own data will, of course, be a lot stronger than is today.
Yeah. You and any thoughts on maybe where we want to potentially be?
Yeah, what I've heard is it's been called SSI inspired, not SSI, and the term SSI, self-sovereign identity, has not been introduced. As I said, this is a legal document so far, and they don't use they deliberately, of course, don't use the term self-sovereign identity, but there are elements there. And what's also interesting opportunity here is if actors can do more than what they need for the EU wallet approval. If an actor can, for example, provide this functionality that is required for the EU wallet and get certified for that, and then you add on extra functionality that could be more in the SSI direction, maybe more suited at other types of services than government services and such.
If I may comment on that, we also see that the regulation clearly opens for approaches where you add more functionality on the top. And it's be exciting to see what suggestions we actually get from potential wallets providers on these kinds of functionality or usage areas.
Absolutely. Now that Kai mentioned that the toolbox discussion will start to bring up, like, what do we anticipate a lot of SSI standards? I call DID and VC's SSI standards into the toolbox, and will that potentially affect the regulation, the legal doc in any way? Because based on that, or will you have like technical barriers on these standards?
As we understand it, it is not very mature when it comes to which standards will be addressed in the early work on the regulation. So we are waiting very excitedly about the first version of the documents coming on the toolbox, just maybe a week or two in the future. So right now we don't know.
No. And then I guess we are going to be able to. What was the time frame of EU Wallet again? 2022? Or
yes, work on the toolbox will be done more or less in a year.
Yeah.
So that will be the timetable for us to influence and bring into this discussion on what we think would be the best approach.
Cool. But then let's move over to the next question, because I don't have a whole lot of talk about regulations, because I work in Africa, so my kind of connection is low. But I do see in the same AU document that they talk much about the same giving the responsibility up to the member states. But the problem in a lot of African countries is they actually don't have like a digital ledger of who's identity ledger. So they kind of have to start there before they are able to move onwards to being able to implement what EU is trying to implement. But let's go into what would be in a wallet. We can both be, let's say it's we can both dream, and we can see if there's been any restrictions in the legal document. So maybe you can begin here.
What will be in the wallet is define a minimum set of attributes in exactly that one in the ADAS, in a proposed annex to the revised ADAS. There you should be able to get address, age, gender, civil status, family composition, and nationality, and then also educational and professional qualifications. So your university degree, even your university diploma, your professional qualification as a licensed lawyer, carpenter, or whatever you do, right? Public permits, licenses, like your driving license, so you can present that to a car rental company in another country. Financial and company data, which is more when you go into representing legal person, for example, and what you can do that. There's clearly more to come. It's clearly more that can be added here. Payment, for example, which is something we frequently associate with a wallet, right? And yeah, other stuff. But these are the minimum attributes. And, as I said, also there is some standardization to be done here to say how do we represent educational qualifications in a standard way so that these can be interpreted by service provider in another country or government agency. Yeah, Kai.
Kai, do you want to add some like what to the question in terms of what would be in a wallet? Are there legal restrictions, or is it just imagination that stops us?
Yeah, I think just also sorry for dropping the connection. That was not intended. So I wasn't really involved in the last 5 minutes. But when it comes to what can go into a wallet, I think this is under the new legislation. If it actually comes through like this, everything can end up in such a wallet. And I think it's definitely possible to add other functionality to the wallet. And also, I think what one could imagine is that that is very likely because of the way the regulation proposal is formulated, because it clearly says that all identity wallet related functions of the wallet have to be logically separated from other functions of the wallet. It says so in some of the later pages of the proposal. And that to me read like the opportunity to have other types of wallet features, like for example, payment, but also others to be included here. So I would definitely think that other features can be added to the functionality set of a wallet. So making it more into a kind of Swiss knife.
Yeah. Tour, have you guys been having brainstorms and workshops of what can be in a wallet, or?
We have just started. So we have been in discussions with some of the large sectors around us, both in the public but also in the private area. And I think it's important to see that the attribute side and what can be put into the wallet very much must be a sector discussion. And what can drive it also needs to be discussed in the different sectors. For instance, what can you foresee be put into the wallet from the finance sector? Of course, payment is already discussed pretty heavily, as we understand. Digital currency is also on the table, but you can foresee a lot more kinds of proofs and attributes being put into the wallet, like finance statements for buying houses, insurance, and lots of things. We have also on the public side started to discussing a little bit with health and other ones. There is lots of ideas and possibilities showing up. Maybe that also could be something to follow up in this kind of forum in the future. What kind of use cases do we actually see?
Absolutely. That would be interesting. I know that DIN is also kind of working with NTNU and a couple other organizations. And one really interesting use case has also been power of attorney and how do you kind of do that. So yeah. In relation to this question, there's already a couple of questions.
I'm not sure if the signature thing has already been mentioned, but remote signing regulated under eIDAS is also part of the use cases that the EU wallet should support. And that's one of the kind of basic requirements. So I think that is really an interesting feature because digital signatures have really not taken off in kind of large scale. They're mostly in the enterprise world today, but even there it really hasn't reached widespread adoption. So at least in Germany, I think that could be one of the dynamic factors to make this wallet an interesting component in day-to-day life.
Yeah, I wonder what will happen with DocuSign and all these companies then.
You can look, adding on to that, surely it's a basic requirement that this can be used for qualified signatures. And you could imagine in the first run that you got your signing keys in the wallet on your phone, which is likely not happening because the hardware on the phone will not have the proper certifications, and there are other issuing around it. So I see it as the wallet will have an interface, standardized interface, and standards exist in this case to remote signing services where the actual signing is done. So we are looking into services where we generate signing key pairs and certificates on the fly for one-time use. And in that case, you can imagine also doing signing where you release attributes and you include attributes in the signing certificates according to the context of the signature. So if you sign in a professional role, information about your company could be included. If you sign in another role, some other information will be included. And your unique identifier in some cases and not in other cases, for example. There's lots of opportunities in signing.
Absolutely. So we have a question from Michael Herman here, who are you actually authenticating the values of attributes? So I think there is more. The thought here is that where does the authentication of the attributes happen? Is the attributes inside a container and envelope? It might be a little bit leading question to a verifiable credential, but I just wonder what do one foresee here? How do one think that these attributes will be validated going forward?
It is, of course, one of the issues that we will discuss with the toolbox. So, yeah, to answer more than the kind of obvious question that it could be actually could be the way to go. We will have to wait a little bit to see.
Yeah. So there's no lot leading insights to it unless the toolbox is like the first drop of anything interesting, basically.
I think yes, that's where we are right now. Of course, there is work going on inside the commission, but right now not too detailed. So still we are at the starting point.
Yeah, I guess there's what we can say by today's time is that there is a strong lobby for verifiable credentials.
Yes.
Also because there's no need to run verifiable credentials with DIDs or anything like that, right? So you can build verifiable credential-based systems without building on the rest of the SSI kind of stack. And the FCSF project has relied on them in the past, etc. Yeah. Also, the German government is building stuff on top of verifiable credentials. Other governments have piloted things. So I think that is a good candidate. But we're definitely far away from knowing whether it's going to be BBS plus verifiable credentials based on JSON-LD or anything like that. I think we are at least a year from knowing that in detail.
I agree with Kai. I think it's also heading in that direction, and that is the intention, but it's not stated anywhere, and there is specifications and standards to be developed to make that happen. I think the intention is to go in that direction. Yes.
How would, for example, you have Evernym in the UK who's building Travel Pass, and if they build on this stuff, how will this be interoperable? Like, will there ever be interoperability with the SSI world? Or is that why it's being a push for verifiable credentials potentially?
If I jump in, EU has never been that keen on thinking interoperability outside of the EU and the internal market. It's a weakness. In some early presentations, I made statements like, listen, we're moving from national islands to an EU island. with the ADAS regulation. It's still an EU island. I don't think much thought has been spent on how this shall work with the rest of the world. Hopefully, it will build on as far as possible on accepted standards and specifications, meaning it can be possible.
Absolutely. So in relation to what you said about who can be trusted issuers, there's a question here where if you get a use case where there basically would be a corner grocery store or a small convenience store who want to be able to issue credentials, will that ever be possible? Like, if you see a valid use case for that, do you think that would, or do they have to then go and apply for this big being a trusted service to issue attributes, basically?
Being a qualified trust service provider, which is needed if you say you want to do qualified attribute attestation, that's not for the grocery store. That's not for anyone to do. So this case, this will be some of what you say, that in principle anything could go into wallet, but that will be outside of the EU wallet part functionality. It will be some add-on functionality to provide also attributes at a lower assurance level than is official information that's covered by the ADAS regulation.
Yeah. Did you raise your hand here, Jon? It was a very small icon, so I couldn't see it. Tor, sorry.
Yeah, but I think Kai was first.
Okay, yeah.
I did. Yeah, I think it's going to go quick. I just actually can agree with Jon mostly. I think we'll definitely see wallets that can do both. But as a corner store operator, I do not expect them to do anything more than using some third-party service for issuance, or using very simple issuance on the low level of assurance, if at all, mapped into a level of assurance logic. And it's still going to be functional if it meets the technical specifications and works well against the respective test suits, right? So it doesn't have to be qualified, it doesn't have to be substantial in order to work with the wallet. At least that would be my hope. So we really have a flexible system.
Yeah.
So share the views of the others here, but we also have tried to advocate that in the system there lies a big market for both those provided a qualified service for producing attributes, and maybe also on a lower level. And even though that maybe how we see EID and roles for EID providers may change over time, there is still the most important part here, where you actually provide attributes from different parts of the society, and there could be a clear role for those entities that we today have in the market.
Yeah. Sounds good. I cannot say where we're going, but I do wish that there at least is not becoming a very there has to be some trusted services on the core identity part, but there has to be an openness to be able to allow for innovation in the market. And how that's going to work out, I have no idea, but I do hope that we're able to at least get there, and I hope that we can focus on interoperability as well, because we are online and we're able to send each other letters to the rest of the globe, but we should be able to use each other's digital services as well. There is another question from Steinar Skagmo. If reuse of information the government holds about me in the future only can be done through EU Digital Wallet, wouldn't that be a powerful driver?
I can try now. Hi, Steinar. If it only would be done through the EU Digital Wallet, it would fit well with the module for cross-border use. But like in our countries, as Steinar know very well, we have these very strong data sources and strong registers. So I think clearly there will be information exchange also going on in other ways than just through the wallet. But for cross-border use, yes, a lot easier than some of the systems we have today.
Yeah.
So it'd be exciting to see what will, for instance, happen to regulations like the single digital gateway and such in the future.
Absolutely. Any other comments from you or Kai? Or?
No, I absolutely agree with Tor. That's sufficient answer, I think.
We have talked a little bit about the scope of what's going to be stored. It's not defined, so we can say that this is covered. And I think Kai said that you kind of look upon it as a layer 1 and layer 2, basically, if I'm correct. Say that there will be added on services for you to be able to store multiple things in the wallet in a way that allows you to use it across the service. Is that correct to summarize? Kai?
Yeah.
And then...
Sorry, wasn't aware this is directed to me. I guess yes.
Yeah, sorry. I tried to say Kai, but...
And I'm also I already have to prepare for leaving the call. I'm very sorry. I have a coming up call. I can stay for 5 more minutes. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. So we can talk about this question. Like, what are there strict regulations stopping the big tech from providing any wallets? What do you guys see where this will come? It was directed to Jon initially, but I think this is a question that will fit everyone.
Yeah, I can start anyway. Well, there is wallets are provided at national level. So in some countries, you could imagine Apple, for example, as a good example, providing an EU wallet and being approved as a provider. That could be in one country. What stops Apple in this case is that you cannot have one Apple wallet that's approved all over the EU, or that worst situation is that you have something provided by one of the big techs, one or several of them, that de facto becomes something that service providers and even government all around across Europe must accept, because it takes on majority usage. It's the technology that becomes used in practice for all practical purposes. So that's where it's important that the EU sees it important to provide this and not leave the control of the identity services to the big techs. There could be a role. Apple could be approved in Finland, for example, for providing a wallet. Likely wouldn't be fit well with their business model.
Yeah.
If I can add to that, I think, like everything, most development in the IT world is user-driven, and we will end up in discussions with how should we address wallets coming from things like Apple that is present on half of the Norwegians' phone already. And I don't think we can stop that discussion, and I'm not even sure that we should.
No.
But there are all the elements that Jon talks about that we need to consider.
Yeah. We can hear from Yolocom before you leave, Kai. Like, what would be your guys' strategy? Because you're a private company, is it positioning yourself as a commercial actor to provide for countries in the EU, or what do you think a strategy for you guys would be? Did we
actually, while we're current time seen it, I think, I'm not sure if I'm audible. Sorry. While we're seen as a wallet company, mostly we're also having other products that are linking into that space a bit more. But we're currently providing the kind of context in the context of the IDAS 2, we're currently providing a few projects funded by the German government with wallet technology. And this is very much developing into the direction of the IDAS 2. So we're thinking that there might be a chance for our technology stack to live on in whatever wallet setup covered by Germany, and also we're active in the European market and also beyond with our technology. For us, that is a rather welcoming development.
Yeah. So you're looking at it as a positive thing that they're actually driving in the direction you guys are already working, I guess. But if you have to go, Kai, then I will say thank you to your participation, and we will continue on if that's okay with Jon and Tor. There we have a couple of questions more, but thank you, Kai, and we will move onwards to the next question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and I hope we can come back together here in a few months to see how things developed. That would be quite interesting.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Try to make that happen. So we can take this from perspective from Jon, like how should all this kind of work with ID providers? You did mention it in your presentation that it's up to the government. And then then will be more of a question between both of you guys. Where are Norway leaning, if we even know that? How would this lock-in happen potentially? So we can start with a comment from Jon where you guys potentially want to see this happen, and then we can have a comment from Tor to hear what, if you have any initial thoughts, you're able to share.
Yeah, this is a difficult question. Market situation and what do existing ID providers do? I mean, we have a discussion ongoing with the Finnish authorities already because they want to launch a call for a national wallet quite much in this area this autumn. And they're struggling a bit what to do and how to ensure that what they initiate will be something that they later can be made EU wallet compatible. And I wonder also what Denmark is about to launch, their new EID, national EID, the MIT ID, which is not the wallet, and different implementation, which it's a big bang and it's going to be deployed to the entire population. How will Denmark react to this in the context of spending $1 billion or two of Danish kroners on a new identity system? What will the effect be on bank ID in Norway and Sweden? I don't know. I don't know if any of these how these actors will react to the proposal, if they will adjust their services to try to comply with the specifications that will come and enter this wallet market, or if they will just say, we'll continue our service and that will work for many years still until it's possibly replaced by something else. I don't have a good answer to it, but there are issues, as I mentioned, also on state subsidies and competition law. If a government issues a wallet that is interpreted as another EID that's released in a market and takes market shares out of commercial providers. So there are also some legal difficulties there.
Yeah. Jon, do you have any, or Tor, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, we take the proposition very seriously. We will spend resources on this and have even seconded our experts to the Commission to support the work. I think this aligns well with what we see as next generation digital identity. and some of the IDs that we have had in Norway would naturally involve in this way. Despite what happens to this regulation, I think we will see digital wallets emerging also in our identity space. You can see the first signs on that. We are talking to several of the sectors on how we see a possible way forward could be here. We are talking to EID vendors also, of course. We are interested to talk to everybody that may have an idea or want to have a say in what we're going to think and how our goal should actually be. So please reach out if you would like to talk to us. But as I can see, we would probably end up with a pilot on this maybe in 2022, 2023, following the timeline of the commission. So this is exciting days for us.
Absolutely. But well, and since the commission is trying to kind of drive forward, like, do you see that there will not be a whole lot of or where would you see tech development come in when the toolbox is to be done in late 2022?
I think for those wanting to enter into this space must realize that you need to have a market probably spanning over more than one country.
Yeah.
At least with our small countries. You will see big actors and players moving, both in Germany, France, and others, and need to be aware of this. We would, of course, do our best to involve and share what we can do when moving forward with the toolbox discussions. And also maybe this forum can help and support us in this. Of course, it has to be within the boundaries that we are allowed to and working with the commission. But as far as we can share information, we'll be happy to do that.
That's great to hear. I also know that you guys did have, or are you guys allowed to talk about the summer project, or should I stop?
Oh yeah, the summer projects. That we can talk about a lot. So we had students working on some first takes on a digital wallet, must for us to learn more about digital wallet technology and looking into basic sets of implementation. It was great fun, and also the product that the students produced was really good. That said, there is of course a lot of difference between a summer project and an EU wallet spanning several countries, probably being implemented and securing very sensitive information. So it's still a big gap there. You mustn't read this as any way of a decision that our agency will develop a wallet by themselves. This decision has not been made, just to be clear, so that you don't think that we are moving ahead. This was a summer project, but great students.
Absolutely. I think it's a good highlight to just showcase that you guys dare to dip your feet into the water and kind of understand a little bit more. I know I was also trying to have a couple of meetings with them to kind of tell them about my point of view of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to see that a lot of that has also been included in the report. So it's good. So yeah, well, let's just take, let's call this a wish question. Like, what would be the approach of doing multiple? Let's do 2 questions here. I will say multiple wallets first, just to kind of cover that, because as you said earlier, there's going to be user drive in the tech world, and the ones who are technically going to deliver the important trusted data are the trust services or the issuers, basically, and then the wallets are basically just containers that are deemed to be secure. So what's your guys' take on potential multiple wallets in the market? Right, in like a Norwegian market specifically, and there will be in the EU, but in a member state market.
Well, I can try and answer a little bit for Norway. That leads us back to that Norway being a very small country. So our ability to lift up large ecosystems of different wallets for doing the first take on how to introduce this is probably not that likely.
No.
We would probably be looking at a smaller set or a set of vendors that we could be able to support. We haven't taken any decisions yet. To be frank, we have had very few coming forward to saying, I want to be the wallet provider for Norway. That's been kind of quiet. So that could maybe be a challenge to some of the guys around this. But yeah.
Where do you go if one wants to be a wallet provider? Where do one go and say that?
You can say it to Digdir. We are working on a strategy now together with our ministry on what should be the goal for digital identity for the public sector. We started that actually before we got the new IDAS proposal, but we need to bring this into our content. We're trying to understand the market and what could be the players. So,
yeah. And Johan, what's your guys' take on a wallet provider? Is that a thought you guys been playing with?
Yeah, we are a other type of service provider because we provide infrastructure services. But we have a product called Mobile ID, which is your identity in an app, essentially. An SDK you can integrate in other apps. That's getting quite popular and it's very good. But you don't see Signicat. You see our customer. Like if you use the Bank Norwegian app, for example, you will log in using Signicat Mobile ID embedded in the app. And we're looking into extending this to a wallet platform that can be instantiated. But it would be in connection with a customer. It wouldn't be our brand name like a Signicat ID, but we could have a customer wanting to step into that position and using our technology.
Yeah.
That we hope to be able to sell in different countries if we make it available. But there needs to be a business case for us, meaning we need to be able to deploy a sufficient number of such wallets and insufficient number of countries to do it. On the other hand, we have the broker role, so we will accept the wallet as one mechanism into our identity hub to be then used again to customers that use us for logging in and for signing. And signing we will surely provide together with the wallet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I can also say that like while we are doing wallet provisioning in Uganda, but we have that difficulties of the market where we cannot rely on everyone having a smartphone. So there's certain, let's call it shortcuts that has to be taken. And also DIN is also looking to do a research project with NTNU and also Signicat to see how and where does this fit in, not directly wallet, but a more infrastructure piece. So there's a lot of interesting work going on in this ecosystem. We have about 2 more minutes. Is there any of these 3 questions I would like to kind of potentially end with this one? Like what would be, if you guys can tell us what would the path forward be for EU and Norway? We have talked about it like initially, But if we could kind of end and say, that, summarize it up, so people are a little bit aware of what they can expect going forward.
I can tell you what I know. The legislation process is going ahead like a normal legislation process in the EU, where there are discussions in the parliament now with being intensified in September. We are starting up work on the toolbox. There would be an expert group for addressing the toolbox, which we are taking part in. We would do dissemination activities and discussions with the Norwegian actors on what goes on in the toolbox work as far as we are allowed. And our Norwegian implementation, we would probably have a clearer picture on that around maybe by the end of this year or early next year.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you have any other contributions there, Jon?
Not really, because we don't know much. Tor and the government are mostly involved.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention Signicat will also be definitely be a qualified attribute provider. That's a role we'll take in the future, but that's not a story. Yeah. We are eager to follow the process and see what happens. And we are eager to be involved.
And I can just add one rumor. As far as I understand, there would be private actor involvement later this year.
Yeah.
So there would be some activities from the Commission on that also.
That's cool. I think we got to end now. There was a very eager question about how people are going to, like, attributes of myself are potentially my own data. Has there been any discussions around paying people for their own data, or is that kind of too far-fetched for this regulation?
I haven't heard any discussions on such a topic, and the discussions have focused on that the data is the user's data and should be freely available to the user and under the user control.
Yeah.
So I think that is probably a big enough shift in how governments thinks about data.
There's also for payment there is an issue, right? Because it passes through the wallet. So if a service provider needs attributes and the attribute provider needs to get paid, and all the traffic goes through the wallet, then the payment sort of must go the same route. And you could imagine that also being used to pay the user a share for sharing the data if it's relevant. But payments and the business models for all the actors involved, that's something that needs to be further explained.
That's cool. I'm gonna take or be mindful of the time, so I think we're gonna end it here, and we can of course have multiple follow-ups on certain subjects. I think this was a very, very good conversation, and a lot of questions were answered. So I'm happy you showed up in such a short notice, Tor, and I'm happy that you are here, Jon. And we will try to get these conversations going on in the future. So, any last words? I think we can say thanks for today, and we can end the live stream.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And bye for now.
Bye.